Hello, this is our second video for our introduction to functions, and this is going to deal with how mappings work and being able to tell if data represented in a mapping is a function or a non-function. So here's an example of our mappings, and we already learned from before that functions don't repeat in the x values, and these mappings have input versus output, but just as a reminder, the input are your x values, the output are your y values on both sets. I'm just going to write that in there for both sets. Input's the x, output's the y. But if you look at these, if I just highlight them like I did before, okay, none of those look like they're repeating, but then on the other side, none of those look like they're repeating either, so it's kind of like, what's the deal? Well, it's the way that mappings work. Mappings don't show the repetitions by actually repeating the numbers. They show the repetitions by the arrows. So if I look at this first set, I only have one arrow coming out of the -2 to the 0. That would be the same on a table. I'm going to make a little table here in between them so we can tell, of an x value of -2 and a y value of 0. Same thing's happening on the next one. I only have one arrow coming out, so that would be the same thing as the -4 going to the 2. And then on the next one, I only have one arrow coming out, so then that means that the -6 will go to the 4. And then on the last one, I just have one arrow coming out, and so that means that the -8 goes to the +6. And when you write it up as in a table so that you can see the connections between the two, then you can definitely see that there's no repeats in this X column. And I'm going to do the same thing with the one next to it, and let's see if the repeats become a little bit more obvious. Okay, so once again, I'm going to draw like my little table. I'm going to put it up a little bit higher. Oops. I'm going to do it in pen. Okay, and I'm going to do my connection. So the -2 is going to the 0. And then on the next one, the -4 is going to the 2. And then on the next one, the -6 is also going to the 2. And then on the next one, I have the -8 is going to the 4. But the -8 has two arrows coming out of it, so I've got to do one for the last arrow. And that one's the -8 is going to the 6. So if I look at my table now that I have drawn, and if I highlight my X column, now I can sort of definitely see that I have some repeats here, and the repeats are in the -8s. Now how that is shown in a mapping is the fact that we had two arrows coming out of an input value. You can only have one arrow coming out of an input, not two. If there's two arrows coming out of it, it's got to be coming out of this input side, then that means that that number repeats. So let's see if that sort of works on this next one that says it's not a function. I'm just going to highlight the ones where I've got two arrows or more coming out of the same number, because that would indicate a repeat. So here I've got an arrow coming out of the 5 going to the 20, and here I've also got a 5 going to the 5. If I wanted to do a little table version of just those numbers, then I've got the 5 going to the 20, and I've got the 5 going to the 5, and we can see that the 5s repeat. But I also have another repeater on this one, so we can look at that. The 15, I've got two arrows coming out of the 15. So I can model that one as well. The 15 goes to the 5, and the 15 also goes to the 15, and my 15s repeat. I'm not going to highlight the arrows coming out of the 10 or the 20 because there's only one arrow coming out, so those don't repeat. Similarly, on this example, I have nothing to highlight because I only have one arrow coming out of each input side. So if I were going to try to make the table, the 5 goes to the 5, the 10 goes to the 10, the 15 goes to the 15, and the 20 goes to the 20. But remember, all we care about is, oops, all we care about is the X side, and on the X side, nothing repeats. So there's no need to highlight any of those. If I go to my last little set on this side, once again, none of the arrows, all of the arrows are coming out of one number. There's not more than one number with two arrows. So if I were to make a table, 0 goes to 9, 1 goes to 9, 2 goes to 9, 3 goes to 9, and 4 goes to 9. But if I just highlight my X side, none of the X values repeat. We don't care about the Y values, it's just the X values. If I look at the other side, every single arrow, I'm going to highlight them all, is coming out of the 2. So the 2 has multiple arrows coming out of it. That means, I'm going to do it over here, that the 2 is repeating. 2 to 0, 2 to 2, 2 to 4, and 2 to 6. And then if I go back and highlight it, we can see that I just have a whole bunch of 2's repeating every single time. So that's why this one is not a function. So you can either make a table of the values so that you can see where the repeats happen, or you can remember that you're looking for something that looks like this, where you have multiple arrows coming out of the same number. Also, it happens here and here. More than one arrow coming out of the same number. So that number repeats, 15, the 5. This number repeats, the 15. And then over here, that number is repeating. And remember, you cannot have repeating numbers on the X values, which are the same as the inputs.